incited an erection.
His various cases of, he's got inciting charges of inciting an erection.
Donald John Trump incited the erection.
They didn't like Donald Trump. They said he participated in an erection.
As the 21st century began, natural selection, the process by which the strongest, the smartest, the fastest reproduced in greater numbers than the rest, a process which had once favored the noblest traits of man, now began to favor different traits, a dumbing down. How did this happen? Evolution does not necessarily reward intelligence. With no natural predators to thin the herd, it began to simply reward those who reproduced the most and left the intelligent to become an endangered species.
David Blackman and Greg Budell present Tales of the Idiocracy.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
And we love David Blackman, who comes to us live from somewhere in Texas. Man with a 10-gallon brain, blogger extraordinaire. David, good afternoon to you, my friend.
Yeehaw, y'all.
Yeehaw.
Yeah, hee-haw. That's our country. I was just reading the New York Post headline about Biden's planned $7.5 trillion budget with $5.5 trillion in new tax hikes. Who can't vote for that? Who doesn't want that?
And a deficit of $2 trillion.
Yeah. And for what? What does he need all this money for? For left-wing Beazle schmears, pardon me. But if you speak Carney, you know exactly what I just said. Anyway, how you doing with the time change, first of all? It's been kind of a weird day for us.
I hate it, man. It's the stupidest thing we do every year in America. I get so angry, Greg, because I was lobbying down in Austin in 2011 in that session, and we had a bill that got all the way through the Senate, got to the House. It was going to go on the floor for a vote the next day, and the authorizing committee in the House bottled it up in the dark of night and killed the bill. And it was a bunch of rural Republicans who did it that would have gotten rid of daylight savings time for Texas, just like they have in Arizona. And it was Republicans who did that, not Democrats. And it just makes me so angry. I think back on that. And it's the stupidest thing we do every year.
Well, I'll tell you, there's a universality to this. It's not a political thing. Nobody seems to understand why we started doing it in the first place and why we continue to do it. We've passed bills in our legislature to stick with one time year round. And but I guess Congress plays a role in that. You just can't arbitrarily change your time zone without approval from them.
Right. You'd have to have approval from Congress, but the first step is for your legislature to act. And unfortunately, this thing, for whatever reason, and I never understood it then, I don't understand it now. There is a lobby out there that tracks bills that are trying to do away with daylight savings in individual states and organizes opposition to them and goes in and strategically finds state representatives or senators who are willing to kill the bill with one of 1,000 parliamentary tricks. There always are where you can kill a bill. It's pretty easy to kill bills. And so, I have no idea who's behind that organized effort. It was never explained to me, even by a couple of Republicans who I dealt with a lot back then, who were in on the effort to kill it. And they couldn't explain it to me and didn't want to talk about it. And, it's
that age where I have to ask you questions before I forget them. Any inside buzz on who might replace Mitch McConnell?
Well, I think it's probably going to be either John Cornyn or John Thune, unfortunately. The only other real possibility, in my view, is John Barrasso, the senator from Wyoming, who would be the best of the three, really. Cornyn's worthless. He's the worst senator we've ever had from Texas. Thune is, he's just followed Mitch McConnell around.
Maybe you can explain so I understand Texas better because they've given us Ted Cruz. I think your governor is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
But they keep putting this.
Yeah, Cornyn, he had been our attorney general, and he got elected. I'm trying to remember now, was he elected? Yeah, I think he was elected. And he was decent as attorney general. He wasn't great, but he was decent and seemed like a fairly conservative Republican when he was here in Texas. But he immediately, upon getting to the Senate, decided he wanted to be in leadership. And so that meant following Mitch McConnell around like John Thune has done for all these years, and Barrasso. And they were they became Mitch's inner circle. And Cornyn virtually never pays any attention to issues that are really important to Texas. He's worthless on the border. He's worthless on energy. He's worthless on everything that really matters to Texas. But in favor of just pushing Mitch McConnell's agenda in the Senate. Thune is from North Dakota. He's same thing. He's useless for state-centric issues. Barrasso's a little better. Of the three, I think Barrasso would be the better choice. I think he's certainly the most intelligent among them and the most connected to his state, which, Wyoming is a great state with a largely rural state.
Liz Cheney.
Right. Well, yeah, except for the Cheneys. Yeah, what can you do about that?
See,
Of course, she
yeah.
lives in Virginia now. She hadn't actually lived in Wyoming for a decade. But I know that Elon Musk is trying to push Rand Paul. And,
Yeah.
I would love that. I'd love to see
So would
Rand
I.
Paul or Mike Lee or Ted Cruz or even John Kennedy from Louisiana.
Oh, that would be
become the new
hilarious.
leader. Yeah,
We'd have more entertainment and political news with John Kennedy as the speaker. Then
yeah,
that would be so awesome.
But Rand Paul is like the social outcast among the Republican caucus in the Senate. Rand Paul wouldn't get 10 votes to succeed.
Pathetic is that.
Mitch.
That's just so pathetic.
Yeah, and then you have Rick Scott from Florida who tried to unseat Mitch at the start of this current Congress and failed miserably. And I hadn't really seen much from him. I guess maybe he's not going to try to mount a bid for it. But I just think it's probably going to be either Thune or Cornyn. I'm afraid it's going to be Cornyn, which will just be a disaster for the Republican Party.
Yeah, we already have enough of those.
Yeah, and we've had plenty of disasters. Yeah.
Before we continue, I wanted to thank. I know that you distribute our chats through your blog, and I want you to give your blog address in a minute. But I'm picking up some followers on Facebook, and I encourage that because I think you'll like what I post, and I steal from David regularly. So, in addition to the like-mindedness we share, his sense of humor is great. I love it when you put a blog out with the energy meme of the week on your energy blog or something that you include in the regular. It's always fun, and I almost always repost. Quick question on the Oscars. Did you watch any of that last night?
Oh my God, no! I haven't watched a moment of the Oscars in 20 years.
This year I had kind of a vested interest in it because I had I loved Oppenheimer, and our weather guy, Rich Thomas, he and I went to see that because we both love historical movies. And when we came out, we said best picture and best supporting actor for Robert Downey Jr., who is really great. This movie, what it does, it's not a lecture on whether or not we should have used the bomb. And I will argue with anybody on that, that it was absolutely necessary. And you don't want to reduce human life to an accounting practice, but the number of lives that were saved by and it hasn't been used since, I'll remind everybody too, because it was horrible. It was a horrible way for those people to suffer, but we didn't put them in that position. The Japanese leadership did. And they were as bad. We always hear Hitler. I don't see anybody using Tojo as an example of a wretched human being. They were as bad as the Germans were when they were in China.
The things they did in China and throughout the Indian Ocean countries in the lead up to World War II, just the atrocities are just unbelievable. Some of the things you read about that, they were every bit as awful as Hitler. But yeah, Hitler became such the focal point of of evil during that period of time that Tojo kind of got a walk.
Worse than Hitler and Tojo combined was Joe Stalin.
Yeah, in terms of the number of people they killed, and Mao
and his own people, not just enemy combatants, but he starved his own people. He made all his moves with zero concern as to how it might impact the citizens. There's Katie Britt on TV, and I want to talk about her too, because I have a clip from Megyn Kelly that I'd like to play a little bit later. Will you remind me to do all this? Because I'm at that age, especially the day after a time change. So there were actually several really good movies. Hollywood has kind of gotten back into making watchable films. And you may remember somebody who co-hosted with us a few weeks back, Ellen Murray. She does our movie reviews and so forth in the afternoon. Last couple of weeks, we talked about Running Up. She not only picked all the major categories, but she picked two more. Just said, take one of the subcategories. And she sound and original screenplay, nailed those 7 for 7. I wish I had known ahead of time.
Fantastic. Wow.
Done some.
That's hard to do. I had
very hard to do.
I had a really good friend that used to have Oscar parties, and we would go, and I might have seen one or two of the movies during the year. And this year I hadn't seen any of them. I know Oppenheimer's great. I know there were other great movies this year. I'm glad finally a movie somebody has heard of actually won the Best Picture award. That's a nice change.
Yeah, I still haven't seen Parasite, which won Best Picture, I don't know, a few years ago.
What the hell is that? Man, it's just the stuff they
story of the Democratic Party, and it's.
But your comment on Robert Downey Jr., I will say this. I think Robert Downey Jr. is one of the greatest actors I've ever seen in my life. He's one of those actors who disappears into the character.
Yes.
And becomes the character. And it just, Marlon Brando was like that. And Jack Nicholson. And, he's just Robert Duvall and Gene Hackman, so many great actors.
Yeah, they make
Denzel Washington. It's another one. Yeah.
Those are all guys that can make a weak movie much more watchable just by being in it. And Hackman, especially Robert Duvall, you're right. In fact, there's a movie called Bullet that was made in the late 60s before Duvall really became a star through the Godfather series. And he plays a cab driver there. Even that movie he made better just by being in it. There's a few that have that gift. The show itself, you can tell the left-wing media have called it boring, which means it didn't have enough left-wing crap in it and behavior to. The other thing, I'm going to do this again while it's in front of my face. Kudlow is interviewing Katie Britt.
Yeah.
Luckily, her State of the Union follow-up was pretty well accepted. But man, she has been attacked viciously by conservatives around the country as coming across as a whiny Karen.
It just pisses me off. I have to tell you, I got so angry. I was getting emails all day Friday about how awful she was. I watched it. I thought she was actually pretty good. I think, she's, you have to understand the audience she was trying to appeal to there. And I wrote about it on Saturday. She wasn't trying to appeal. All the criticisms I was getting in email and seeing on Twitter were from old white guys. That's not who she was delivering that message to. She's delivering that message to my daughter, millennial mothers of Gen Z children who are in school right now. That's who Katie Britt is. That's who that message was for. That's the demographic that has killed the Republican Party in the last 4 election cycles. That's why Katie Britt was chosen to give that talk and that response. And it was a message tailored to that audience, trying to actually, appeal to a demographic that has abandoned the Republican Party. This is the audience for The View, right? Yeah. Housewives.
Perfect.
Yeah. And so you're trying to get it. So most of the criticisms I saw, and I saw Megyn Kelly's criticism too. And I like Megyn Kelly. She's one of my favorite podcasters right now. But most of the criticisms I saw were, well, why do you have Vivek Ramaswamy? Why didn't you just get Trump to deliver it? Why don't you do this, do that? Have some fire and brimstone thing to appeal to the base.
Right.
Well, Trump's got the base.
Yeah.
Hey, this campaign has to be about expanding out of the base. Okay. You got to win the election.
What's exciting, and I posted it right after you sent it to me, was this trend in politics through racial realignment with non-white voters shifting away from Democrats and towards Republicans, which, if they have a shred of critical thinking, they should be doing.
Exactly.
They're being screwed too.
Right. But the traditional Republicans, the Mitch McConnell Republicans, the Paul Ryan Republicans, don't give a damn about appealing to non-white voters. Okay. They never have. It's never been what they've tried to do. Trump is different. Trump is trying to expand that base.
Yeah.
And the biggest prize is Hispanic and Black voters who are tired of being taken for granted by the Democratic Party. And then these millennial mothers in white suburban mothers have just abandoned the Republican Party over the last 4 election cycles. They're killing us in Texas. That demographic, okay? And so that's really who that message was tailored to, and not old white guys like me and you. And
Really?
when you look at the criticisms, that's mainly who it's come from. And Megyn Kelly. Megyn was pretty brutal about it. I think she missed the boat on that.
I think I've come up with a new nickname for David. I'm going to call him the human time change, because it seems like we just went an hour forward in 20 minutes because we're ready for the first break. And we haven't even started on the long list of great stuff there is to kick around today. David, before we take the break, please give your blog address so people can find you and support your incredible work.
Sure. It's davidblackman.substack.com for, what is that? Politics, and blackman.substack.com for energy. And I write about both every day.
All righty. We're going to come back to David in just a moment. Right now, we have our first
Talk station on FM, live, local talk, News Talk 93.1 FM, WACV.
in audio. You will only hear on this broadcast as David Blackman and I explore the idiocracy. We have Godzilla's acceptance speech at the Oscar. Godzilla finally won a long overdue Oscar.
Oh, no, run fast.
And that's all we have. It's true that Godzilla did win an Oscar. It's also true that I had the wrong clip queued up, but hey, those who have been listening to me for a long time expect that level of incompetence. Do we have a call for David?
Steve.
Before we get to our list, let's get Steve on the air. And Steve, you're on with David Blackman.
David, I suspect that these planes with all these illegals they're bringing in here, the Krants are covering the bases one way or the other, but I suspect there was probably some more military types on there. I'm afraid that win or lose the election, that you may have 100 or 125,000 foreign nationals to deal with. That's just my opinion. That's how I see it.
Appreciate the call. I
don't disagree.
I did see video of a plane of all illegals landing at LAX. Of course, California has been welcoming them for years. But that's a concern. Although, David, I've also read and seen stories here and there that the Republicans are actually building teams to combat, or at least work harder on stuff like mail-in ballots. And but what we really need to do is learn how to cheat like the Democrats do, because the only way you can win.
I mean, right, exactly. You have to learn to play the game that's under the rules that are prevailing. And the rules that are prevailing now are mail-in ballots and vote harvesting after Election Day, and all these things that the Republicans seem too proud to either police or do. And the RNC as an institution has been too incompetent to try to organize around. Hopefully the new leadership with Michael Whatley and Laura Trump will change that. But, the Republican Party, Mitt Romney.
Oh, God.
I'm going back to 2012, and I hate to even utter that man's name, but he literally through the 2012 election had zero get out the vote effort, on election day, none, zero, and took that functionality out of the Republican National Committee, out of the Republican Party, and it has never come back. I don't know what the solution is. I'm certainly not anyone who could organize it myself, but the Democrats don't seem have a problem doing it. So it's obviously not rocket science.
I remember in 2012, Mitt was up by 3 points a couple of days, and it kept shrinking. And he mailed it in. He mailed it. He didn't even try because I don't know what want to be called a racist because he took the presidency away from our first half black president. I mean, such crap, such garbage. And now he says he won't support Donald Trump. He'll vote for Biden over Trump. What a joke.
Despicable.
And this is after he suggested Katie Britt be the vice presidential nominee. She's been in the Senate for about a month. I think we could probably look for somebody like Kristi Noem, who's at least had experience leading an entire state.
By election day this year, Katie Britt will have had probably more experience, more time in the Senate than Barack Obama had in 2008.
Well, I think Obama on his first day looked around and said, whoa, I'm ready for that. I'm ready for, and almost knew it was in the bag.
He was a plan.
Well, he did know it was in the bag. Certainly McCain had no chance against him, but Romney was going to win that election if he'd have just put in the effort over the last 3 weeks of it, and he didn't.
The game changer for McCain could have been Sarah Palin, but of course, as soon as she did that gracious acceptance speech at the convention, I think it was in Minneapolis that year, and the response, the passionate response she got, well, they went about the process of destroying her immediately.
McCain and his people.
Can you talk briefly, because we're going to talk Trump here on a couple of different areas, but the blog you put out today about Trump's tweet, it was absolutely clueless on the topic of vaccinations.
Yeah, I was just so upset. I saw that Friday morning that he had put that tweet out bragging about everything he had done on vaccines.
Yeah.
He did that in the midst of Biden's speech Thursday night, and at the point in time where Biden was bragging about vaccinating America. And Trump comes back with the truth. By the way, it's the truth. Trump got those vaccines done in 9 months, got it, started the inoculation process. And if we all remember, during the 2020 campaign was when the vaccination process began. And Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were running around the country talking about how they would never take a vaccine that had been authorized by Trump. Okay. And then as soon as they assume office and get their marching orders from Obama and the people at the CDC and the people at the WHO and the World Economic Forum, all of a sudden they're all in favor of the vaccines and they go forcing everyone to take them. You either take them or you get pushed out of the military, you get fired from your job, blah, 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 yada, yada, yada. Well, what that message Trump put out shows me is he hadn't learned a damn thing from any of that. He's proud of all that. Proud of all that stuff. Proud of these vaccines, which aren't vaccines at all.
No.
They've killed millions of people around the world.
Yep.
From their side effects. Proud of the fact that Pfizer can't be sued because of a deal his administration made with Pfizer to mount that 9-month approval of an unproven vaccine technology and force it on the American people. He's proud of all that. So if you're thinking Trump is, next time a virus comes around, if you think Donald Trump's going to protect you from the abuse of the CDC and all these animals at the World Health Organization and WEF from doing the whole thing over again, I hate to tell you, you're going to be on your own again. Trump isn't going to protect you because he hasn't learned anything.
On that, no.
Yeah.
On the plus side of the ledger, though, David, and I would have never known this had I not seen it in your blog, which is one reason why I keep encouraging listeners. If you're not subscribing and supporting this man, you are missing out on some really useful information, not just politically, astute political observations, but on the energy field as well. That one of the banks that Trump has done business with for decades, who lent him money using his financial statements, that Letitia James, who got her butt booed off by the fire department of New York, and now they want to catch all the firemen who have the audacity to boo the woman. They underwrote his $91 million bond in the E. Jean Carroll case.
Yeah.
It's incredible to me.
Yeah.
That may be the biggest surprise story of the day. I'm sure the media is all over
I mean,
it.
he didn't defraud anybody. You know, it was a fraud case, and what he, you know, like you say, he had to pay a $450 million fine for paying his loans off on time. In fact, many of them he paid off well ahead of time.
Yeah, even Elon Musk, who we'll be talking about in a second here,
Right.
said, who does he make the check out to for this ridiculous damage that the judge came up with? Who's the victim?
Who's the
There's no victim.
There is no victim. There was no fraud, period. And the same institutions that he supposedly defrauded, one of them underwrote, you know, gave assurance on the bond he had to post on the E. Jean Carroll $91 million payout. And I guarantee you, another one of them will underwrite his bond that he's going to have to post for 474 million or whatever it's going to amount to on this other New York case. And because why? Because they want to keep doing business with him because he pays his loan off on time. You know, this isn't hard, folks.
You know, I'm starting to get nervous because I've been making my mortgage payments and car payments. I got to go to jail for this un-American behavior. You mentioned Elon, and I didn't see the story, so I'm going to ask you to elucidate. Yes, we do know a few $5 words in the show. Doesn't agree with Elon on EVs. What's the story there? Please take it from the top.
So here's another example. Trump, you know, despite my diatribe on the vaccines, we have to support Trump. He's light years better than another 4 years of the insanity we've gone through since 2021.
Yes.
And here's another example where he's 100% right about electric vehicles. He doesn't mind electric vehicles, just like I don't mind electric vehicles. A lot of them are beautiful cars, you know, and machines. But there's all these roadblocks to them actually becoming a replacement for gas-powered cars. It's just not ever going to happen. There's too many limitations. The minerals aren't going to be there in the quantities they need, blah, blah, blah. And so Trump, that's a position Trump takes on him. And of course, Musk, as an imperative of the business he's running, has to be a disciple for pushing electric vehicles on everyone. And so they disagree on that. And because they disagree on that, Trump told an interviewer yesterday that on CNBC, or maybe it was early this morning, I guess, that he doesn't think Elon Musk will support him this year. And then Musk made a tweet later in the day saying, well, I'm not going to be giving money to anybody in this campaign, just to be crystal clear about it. So, you know, and that's fine. You know, they have a disagreement on the key part of Musk's business. And so, you know, Musk can't be seen supporting a candidate who isn't in favor of continuing all the subsidies that electric vehicles get.
You also reiterated a warning that we discussed, I believe, on Thursday, that our power grid is in real danger.
Real danger. Very real danger. I mean, on the precipice of absolute disaster. And, you know, I mean, we're living in this fantasy world where policymakers have made it virtually impossible. I mean, really, really hard to build any other kind of generation, new generation, than solar and wind. And nobody, you know, no local communities all over this country are now fighting to oppose new wind. So it's really, solar is about all that's getting built anymore. And solar is intermittent. It depends on the sun. It depends on the wind. I mean, it depends on the weather. You can't rely on it. It is not a 24/7 generation source. And we're living in this fantasy world where we don't have to build more coal and more natural gas and more nuclear because of stupid public policy. And that's going to, at the end of the day, and sometime very soon, we're going to have a major crisis on our power grid because the demands being put on it by AI, who's leading CEO at OpenAI, Sam, what's his name, says we're going to have to double generation capacity by 2040 just to accommodate AI. Okay. Now, add that to the fact that Elon Musk has told us that we're going to have to double generation capacity on the grid just to accommodate recharging electric vehicles. And then you got to account for the rise of cryptocurrency mining, which is an amazing energy hog. All these server farms that are being built all over the country that are amazing energy hogs. Every bit of new technology that gets developed is an amazing energy hog. Our population is expanding, our economy is expanding. That all requires more electricity. Where's it all going to come from? You're talking about $50 trillion in new investment in the U.S. power grid in the next 17 years is what you're going to have to do to accommodate all this. And you're not going to do that with a bunch of solar panels. I'm sorry. That's not going to happen. So we're going to have a major shift in policy and
soon, I would think.
Yeah, and the point I keep making is historically, the only way a sea change in public policy related to energy has ever come about is because we had a major crisis. And so we're going to have a major crisis for that to happen. And I'm afraid, when you're talking about a crisis on the power grid, you're talking about, the grid being down, people being without electricity for months at a time. And that means a lot of people are going to die.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is the immediate and certain inevitability of the collapse of the grid.
And that's, yeah. And so, it's kind of a lottery. We have 8 regional grids around the country. And it's kind of a lottery to see which grid's going to collapse first and cause the major crisis and kill a lot of people. And, if you're the lucky among the unlucky ones living in a specific region where it happens, then God help you, because there isn't going to be a lot the companies and the government can do for you in a situation like that. And nobody in Washington is thinking rationally about this. Very few people anywhere else are thinking rationally about it.
That moved from South Florida to Oregon to be closer to her brother. And she was in an ice storm there a couple of weeks ago. Everything was turned to ice. And for 10 days, they had nothing.
Oh my God.
And including a local leadership that was incapable of even checking on people to see if they needed anything.
Right.
So you may recall Chicago. I think it wasn't in the 90s when hundreds of people died during a heat wave. They had electricity, but it was still so hot that they couldn't accommodate, look after the needs, and hundreds of people died during that. So there's
and that point is the right point, because when the blackout's going to happen is going to be during a period of time when the weather is unusually hot or unusually cold, because that's when the demand on the grid's the greatest, and that's when it's most likely to collapse. So not going to happen on a spring day when it's 72 degrees outside.
And you'll have a Democrat to thank for it, friends. David, the first hour has ripped by. We will be back with you in just a couple of minutes. Before we do that, though, please give your blog address.
davidblackman.substack.com for politics, blackman.substack.com for energy. And we also often get the two intertwined, it seems.
By the way, David's one of those rare people that can inform you and make you laugh, because he's got a great sense of humor too. And I really appreciate that about your work, my friend. All right, back with David in just a minute as we continue to tour the Idiocracy. In fact, we have a long list of things to get to yet. I would like to sing the praises and talk about a place that truly is tracked to our weekly tour through the Idiocracy with David Blackman, our blogger friend from Texas, the man with the 10-gallon brain, as he is known. And now we're going to get serious.
All right.
We had a lot of fun with the first hour, but there are many things that we would like to discuss with David this afternoon. And can we go to the New York Times poll?
Yeah. Isn't that something?
Yeah. Why don't you give us the highlight reel on that? Because I'm hoping this is accurate and is going to keep growing.
Yeah, well, I think it was supported by a poll that the Financial Times released just today. In fact, the New York Times Siena poll and the FT data both show that Biden is only leading Trump among non-white voters, Hispanics, blacks, and other minority voters by a 50 to 46% margin, just 4%. Biden won non-white voters in the 2020 election by almost 50% of the vote.
Man,
I mean, we have to understand what a catastrophic number that New York Times poll number is, if it's accurate.
for the Democrats, yeah.
And it also raises questions in my mind about just exactly how, if that's an accurate number, how is the New York Times structuring its sample for a poll that only shows Trump leading Biden by 5%, if he's only leading Trump by a 50 to 46 margin among minorities? That doesn't make any sense at all, none whatsoever. That would mean they would have to be overpolling Democrats by 15 to 20% to come up with that finding.
I think unless something dramatic happens, they're really, in a legitimate way, doomed big time to them.
Yes, I mean, if Trump is running almost even with Biden among non-white voters, this year's election is going to be one of the most, probably the most massive landslide since Reagan-Mondale in 1984. I mean, it will be an overwhelming landslide election if Trump does that well with minority voters. So, that is an astonishing number. Like I say, the Financial Times issued its own findings this afternoon, and it was essentially very close to the same finding. So,
and this quote that you came up with about Biden to black voters, first of all, we all remember during the campaign, well, if you don't vote for me, you ain't black.
right.
I mean, is that a little racist or what? But
yeah,
I have your back as much as any president has in American history since Lyndon Johnson. Who was a raging racist, the last president who used the N-word on record that I can think of.
Yeah, in the wake of the passage of the Civil Rights Act, Johnson, well, I can't even repeat what he said.
Yeah, I need this job.
But Lyndon Johnson was a raging racist. Okay,
yeah.
I mean, even Robert Caro's biographies, the 4-volume biography he's done of Lyndon Johnson, and which presents him in the most favorable light possible, presents him as a raging racist, because that's what he was. So, I mean, Joe Biden might want to reconsider the analogies he's drawing.
The whole purpose to the so-called Great Society programs of LBJ, in his own words, was to put, and you know the word that goes in our back pocket for the next 50 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's what his friends quoted him as saying.
Right. Pete Buttigieg, I have been living happily without even hearing his name recently. I thought he was just hanging out in the swing with his husband, in the backyard, enjoying nice New Jersey days or whatever. Now that they've drug him out, and why are they doing this? Why Pete Buttigieg? Why is he back?
Well, it is quite kind of amazing. I mean, he's been out doing interviews on the situation at the border. This is the Secretary of Transportation, folks,
right?
Who really doesn't have any charge for dealing with border issues. But the administration is so bereft of anyone who has any credibility at all on the issue that they feel like they've just got to send Buttigieg out there, because nobody lies quite as efficiently and effectively as Pete Buttigieg, other than Bill Clinton. He's
frightening.
Yeah, he's a carbon copy of Bill Clinton, except he doesn't go after women. He lies like most people draw a breath. Okay, it just comes natural to him. There's no affectation. There's no facial tics. None of the body language you associate with pathological liars. He is one of the most effective liars I've ever seen in my life, other than Bill Clinton. So I think they're just trotting him out there because Mayorkas, has zero credibility with anyone. Kamala Harris is too lazy to learn the talking points. And you can't send Joe Biden himself out there to talk about it. My God, especially on an interview on Fox News like Buttigieg did yesterday morning. I mean, Joe Biden couldn't answer a tough question. So, yeah, they're just kind of out of options other than Pistol Pete.
The inside a Biden cabinet meeting. This is exclusive audio you will only hear on this show.
Are you sure this work will be in competent hands? Certainly, we're incompetent.
That's the truth. It's the absolute truth about this clown show.
It really is a clown show, yes.
We have a caller for us at 413 with David Blackman, and we welcome Soldier Boy.
Thank you for taking my call. Hey, David, can you elaborate? I've been hearing these rumors from different sources about these 300,000 illegal aliens that have been flown in an aircraft into the country.
Yeah, that's not a rumor. That's an admission by the Department of Homeland Security, which secretly set up an app, an iPhone app, that where illegals who wanted to fly into the country rather than walk all the way up across Mexico could simply register through their iPhones in this app with DHS, and the United States government has been paying to just fly these folks into the United States to LAX.
Can I get 2 free tickets to Florida if I use the app?
Well, I want a couple free tickets to Vegas while we're at it. I mean, come on.
There you have it.
But it's that app. They were forced to admit it. I don't remember which media site actually dug up the information, but DHS was forced to admit it, and they're still doing it. Apparently, they haven't stopped the program.
I hope Trump throws that into a commercial.
Yeah, well, I hope so.
I mean, you'd have to have a multi-billion-dollar ad budget to do a spot on everything these people are contributing to the hellscape that America is becoming.
Hey, David, did they fly coach or first class?
I don't know the answer to that.
We need to do some more research and a follow-up question. I think my call.
And you keep hearing what a disaster they have been. Well, to the hotel itself, but to the industry, I guess they're getting more money from government contracts than they would from people. These hotels that they're being used in.
Yeah, I mean, the Roosevelt Hotel in New York City is a prime example. It had gone bankrupt during COVID. Okay, it was out of business, and New York City's having the big wave of illegals coming into their city. And what do? Well, they contract with the owners of the Roosevelt Hotel still own the property. And you say, hey, we'll pay you a bunch of money to house all these illegals. Just, come on, reopen the hotel. Let's fix it up. And yeah, they're making money hand over fist now. And it's all coming from taxpayers in New York City. And I guess state of New York, probably some of it's coming from the feds too.
We are at 4:16 already. It's break time again. But when we come back, Dave is going to lead us on to a deeper dive on all of a sudden, this urgent need to ban TikTok. I want to get your thoughts on that coming up on News Talk 93.1 FM. It's 4:16.